Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Claire Wasserman with us. She is the career coach helping ladies get paid. She's a founder, an author, and an entrepreneur. She's Fortune 500 speakers and has a master's certification in financial psychology and behavioral finance. So really cool topic there. I have a wife. She's an entrepreneur. And yeah, money is often something we discuss. And I see sometimes ladies are a bit more shy when it comes to talking and making money. So it's going to be a fun one. We're going to talk about that, career, job search, confidence, salary negotiation, and personal dev. Claire is live from LA, US, and I am live from Oaxaca, Mexico. Claire, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and about what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. Started Ladies Get Paid in 2016. Before that, I wasn't a recruiter per se, but I worked in the recruitment space. So for a number of years, I had this really, really interesting kind of bird's eye view of the hiring process and career development, and just realized I was so much more passionate about helping people thrive once they got the job as opposed to just getting them the job. I also was really disturbed by the wage and the leadership gap, and just kept feeling to myself, gosh, is there anything that I, as an individual, can possibly do to combat something that is just so systemic, right? Systemic change requires policy change, which requires time and patience, and I have neither of those. So I just kept searching, and my aha moment came when a friend said, I just realized that I am charging so much less than my male counterpart. She was a freelance art director. For her, it was two things. It was one, she didn't know what to charge. There was kind of a lack of sort of trusted information when it came to salary information. But then the second part, and this is the part I found most fascinating, was why was her default to just charge less? Didn't have a solution for her other than let's talk about it. So I started to host groups of women to come together to just talk about their relationship with money, and very quickly realized that salary negotiation was kind of the only way that an individual could at least close their own wage gap. And that there was a lot of education out there that was sort of felt outdated, felt corporate, just didn't really integrate not just what to say, but how we feel about what we say, right? That feelings part. That's why I ultimately got my certificate in behavioral finance and financial psychology. Long story short, 55,000 women now are part of our Slack community. They've exchanged over 3 million messages. Everything we do, all the education we provide, the book that I wrote, it's kind of been me eavesdropping. It's like I get to watch this Slack group. I also, teach at companies, and so have continued that bird's eye view of just tapping into not just what I think women want out of their lives and their money, but what do they really need? And it's changed for sure, especially since the pandemic. So there's so much to talk about here, and thanks for having me.
My pleasure. What problems or challenges do you see resurfacing in this Slack group from your ladies?
Yeah, it's a lot of people have a lot of different problems, but there are universals, I would say. A lot of this was underscored by a road trip I took a couple of years ago. I went across the country, went across the US to 19 cities where I hosted these really big town halls for women to come in to talk about money and their relationship with it. And really the patterns that I was seeing was a lot of, I don't know if I've earned it. So questions of imposter syndrome, right? That, I mean, we hear about it a lot, but it's a real thing where feeling like, yeah, I might have gotten the job or the promotion, but I'm worried that I'm not as good as they think I am, or that I've presented myself to be. They feel like they have to constantly play catch up to this image that they've presented. And a lot of that also has to do with the unrealistic standards they have for themselves or put upon them. So perfectionism, where if they make a mistake, it's not just something to learn from and grow from, but it's like this indictment of who they are as a person, and their value. If they get a no, right, whether it's a no to their salary increase or a rejection from a job, it becomes this, catastrophic thing of like, well, then I'm not good enough. And so, life is unpredictable and there are setbacks. There always will be. And so instead of kind of, again, learning and growing from it, there's a lot of suffering, unnecessary suffering, a lot of extra energy that I'm seeing being spent in my community. And same thing goes for boundaries, right? Which I think also comes back to like a feeling of unworthiness. They don't say no enough. as well. So I would say that's kind of the big patterns. Again, everybody's challenges, life situations are different, but I'm seeing those ones come up over and over again in the past couple of years.
What's your philosophies on boundaries and saying no to things? Because I feel there's like two sides, and it's like say yes to everything, the yes theory, and then there's people that are more thoughtful about the opportunities that they get and what they say no to. So, what's your philosophy on that?
I think it's so contextual. So it really depends on where you're at in your life and what your goals are. So if you are just starting your career, probably you need to be saying yes to a lot of things because you never know what will come of them. You never know who you'll meet, what that will lead to, what you're going to learn. If you're too narrow-minded in the beginning of life, then you may find out 5, 10, 20, 30 years later, oh gosh, this is not actually what I want. Obviously, if you're a doctor, a surgeon like my brother, maybe, you need to be singularly focused in the beginning. But I would say yes to pretty much everything when you're really, really young. 37 now, hell no, that is not serving me anymore to say yes to things because I know what it is, the kind of life that I want to have and what my goals are, my financial goals are, my day-to-day goals, the lifestyle, and all that comes down to just deeply understanding what are your values? How do you define success? What, piques your curiosity? What makes you come alive? Doing a lot of that internal work will then help you decide, externally what to say yes or no to. And then also recognizing if you feel tempted to say yes to something, taking a moment and asking yourself, am I saying yes because I'm afraid of what might happen if I say no, meaning that I'm going to hurt their feelings, right? Or am I saying yes because I genuinely, want to help them because giving feels good, / I'm getting something from this, there's no shame in that. So I think for all of us, let's just get really intentional about our decisions. So it's not a one size fits all, but that would be my one size fits all advice.
As an open feminist, you even have a nice jacket behind you. Do you get the hate? Because you're a nice person I'm speaking to, but the preconception of feminists is like they're these sour women. Um, so what's your take on that? Do you get that hate, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, yeah. Listen, when I started Ladies Get Paid, I was pretty naive. Um, my intention is to see everybody do better. I mean, there's research that shows that the more diverse, company leadership is, the more money the company makes. The more money that women make, the better our economy does, right? So it's not like if you help women, you're now hurting men. Like there's just so much research that shows we all do better when we help people who need the help, right? That being said, my gosh, 2 years into starting Ladies Get Paid, I was sued by a group of men's rights activists who accused me of gender discrimination. And their feeling was if I'm helping one group, therefore I am now hurting another group, not recognizing that these things do not have to be mutually exclusive. Long story short, I no longer was so naive and innocent, and definitely experienced a lot of trolling, harassment, intimidation. It was a long process. And as I was saying to you before we jumped on, worst experience of my life that ended up turning into some of the best experiences of my life because we did a crowdfunding campaign and we rallied thousands of people to donate money and to support us. I got a book deal. I gained confidence and strength, right? I also recognized the nuances in the conversation of feminism that was being lost and how to maybe better articulate myself. So there was so much out of it that, led to growth. So I have to sort of be grateful for it. At the same time, hate that it happened. Other than that, no, because I really do try my best to present everything that I do in a way that is just so accessible and inclusive to everybody. And also, we have so much to learn from men. Like, to be honest, the most helpful people for my business have been men. When we needed a loan during the pandemic, it was men who stepped up. Introductions to, major brand partnerships, a lot of them have come from men. Like these things, again, don't have to be mutually exclusive. So I think because of the way I'm presenting myself, I'm probably being received in a kinder way. but I also recognize I'm going to preserve my energy, and I'm going to also speak to the people who get it. And if it takes a lot of energy for me to explain something, it's probably ultimately not worth it, because either they're not the right people that I'm speaking to, or I need to just find a different way to talk about it.
You were in a heterosexual relationship and thought you were straight up to 31 years old. How did that happen? Why did it took you so long to discover your sexual orientation?
Yeah, I think uh, I'm somebody who, from a very young age, from like fifth grade, sixth grade, like I always had boyfriends. I have very much benefited from my privilege, in terms of, the family I was born into and innate sort of talents that I've had. And it became very, very easy for me just to keep going along this path of good girl, like what was expected. Here's the thing though, all of these boyfriends I had, they were all long distance pretty much, including even the guy that I ended up marrying. We didn't really live in the same city for very long. It was it was sort of a long distance relationship. I think that I really was more in love with the idea of all of this. And also, there's a lot of stability that comes with being with somebody who has even more privilege, which men do. So there was comfort there, and friendship, and all of these things that, to me was like, this is a reason to get married. We share values. This is a similar person to me. Like, there was no sort of reason not to. And it kind of goes back, there's something I think about often. And I remind people, you don't know what you don't know. If you've never had exposure to another way of looking at your life, um, you know, like how would you know anything different? So I just really didn't have much exposure, again, because I was constantly in these relationships, and honestly, just so focused on my career and ambition and doing things that I never gave myself the time to really sit and reflect and say, like, who am I? Even though I would go to therapy, it was just, everything was about achievement for me, and at the expense of getting to know myself in a lot of ways, I think.
Having a baby is expensive. You're pregnant right now. Tell us about the process, especially in a lesbian couple. Like, how does that work? Who's gonna be the one that's gonna carry the baby? How are these decisions being made?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I knew that I wanted to, and my wife knew she did not want to. So that made it a very easy decision. I That being pregnant and having that experience was something I was interested in. So I would say the hardest part about it was, it's expensive, right? You can't just like snap your fingers and get pregnant. Though that being said, we have a lot of friends who are in heterosexual couples who are now going through infertility. So they're experiencing exactly what we did. But the other hard part that a lot of people don't talk about is, how do you choose the donor? You go through all of the directory of people, but deciding what sort of variables, factors, DNA matter to you, you're never going to find the quote perfect person. So deciding, okay, am I okay that they're a little bit shorter, but they've got a better medical history, or they're really, really good looking, but their SAT scores were a little bit lower. It's a fascinating experience because it really makes you question yourself of what is important to you. And we ended up getting twins. So, who will be here in the next 3 weeks, probably, but who knows? So, yeah, so we have a boy and a girl, which I think in and of itself is going to be really fascinating, even from a, just like nature versus nurture. And I'm so excited about it, especially because I have twin brothers. So I feel like if anyone can do this, we're prepared. But, famous last words, check in with me in a few weeks and I'll probably be crying.
Yes, you will, 100%. But that's the journey. I mean, I haven't been there yet, but we're about to in less than 2 years, and I have certainly friends and a brother that's been through that, and it's hardcore.
Yeah.
It's harder than an Ironman, you know. People are like, "Hey, Charles, you 3 times Ironman," but yeah, that's nothing compared to most things in life. I have a
But
question
hold
with,
on, but
yeah,
I actually do want to just so for you and for anybody out there who is an entrepreneur who's listening, this is advice or a comment that came from another entrepreneur friend who's had 2 kids. And she said, Claire, if you were an entrepreneur, I'm telling you right now, having kids is not as hard as you think it is. I was like, really? She's like, yes, if you know what it's like to live your life amongst, instability and chaos, you have to keep your business alive. You have to, I mean, it's not the exact same thing, obviously, but you just get so much better at kind of dealing with the unknown and being resourceful, that you have a lot of the raw skills already that you might not even realize that actually primes you quite well for this next phase where, you really just don't have control.
right. Yeah, no, certainly. I had 4 dogs some time ago. Like basically we adopted a mother from the street. She was pregnant, and that was sort of a glimpse of the experience. It's like low sleep, right? And taking care of these beings. But yeah, the sleep aspect is quite harsh for me, I guess. Like I have
Like sleep.
20-ish meetings a day. So like you add 3 hours of sleep, which is what I did pre-wedding last year. And it was quite intense. You know, I had all the symptoms of burnout. Um,
Right.
I need to ask the question though, like on the donor side of things,
Yeah.
because you're into this like selection, well, you're into like diversity basically. So how did it feel to kind of being selective on one thing, and what did you select? Because for example, me, I want to have my own, but I want to adopt as well, and ideally all kinds, and just to prove to the world, and that's not usually the good reasons, but that mindset and nurture is way more
Yeah.
powerful than, like the genes and all of that. So what's your stake on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, it's interesting. My wife is of Italian origin, and because she's not going to be biologically related to the babies, um, it was important for her that they come from somebody who is of Italian origin. So that pull towards wanting to feel similar to your child is a very real thing. Um, and that was important to her. And so we were looking for Italian donors. We ended up finding a guy who is Italian and Jewish, which is funny because I'm Jewish. And he sort of looks like and reminds us a little bit more of my family, people in my family than even in hers. And that's where we talk a lot about how her presence, the way that she will raise them, that's like the nurture part that will be incredibly important. But at the same time, people have told me the way that the kids are, even in your womb, with one of the, like for one example, one of the twins is more active than the other. That's the way they're going to be when they get out. Even as infants, that active one in the womb is going to be the one keeping you up at night. So that kind of goes back to like, as much as we want input into how we raise our kids or the kind of control that we think we have in our lives, you got to let go too and say, they're going to be who they're going to be, and they're going to show that to me. And so it is a really fascinating process when you are picking out a donor, because you are trying to control for all of these things and you get so much information. I mean, we had 3 generations of medical records that we could look through. I mean, I doubt you even have that for your wife. Like, so it's really information overload. And then you have to ask yourself, like, how much of this is important to me? Um, so I don't know. I feel like we also kind of got lucky, but again, to the point of like, it turned out it was quite important to her and kind of to me, I guess, that the person feel familiar to us. So, but that's tribal. Like, we're predisposed to want to connect with people who remind us of ourselves, which is why you see a lot of bias. It's not out of malicious. Like, you're not going into a company and saying that man's hiring another man because he doesn't like women. No, it's because that man reminds him of himself, and then there's inherent trust. So, we saw that even in ourselves throughout this process.
And on the sperm side of it, like what would be my incentive to donate sperm? I mean, there's a bunch of guys out there that are probably taller and prettier than myself, also smarter. So what would be my incentive to go jerk off in some clinic and donate my sperm?
There's actually a huge shortage of it. I wrote an article about the experience and cost of going through this. And so I interviewed one of the people who runs the cryobank, and there's a serious shortage because, first of all, they're only accepting about 1% of the people who even donate. So it's actually very hard to get into it. There's been a decline in quality, actually, for maybe a number of reasons, pollutants, things like that. Also, less people want to donate because now many of these clinics make you submit pictures of yourself. So you are technically not really anonymous. I mean, we don't know his name, we don't know where he lives or things like that, but we see his adult pictures. So if he lives in LA and he's we know he has a bartending certificate and he's our bartender, I mean, chances are we could run into him. Especially now with 23andMe, right? And ancestry.com. People are getting in touch. Kids are, they're turning 18 and they're finding their donors. So, to your question of like, what's my incentive? I think the incentive has gone way down now. Not only is, harder to get accepted, like you got to be ready to be contacted. I mean, you could decline. You can always say, I don't want somebody to get in touch with me and not respond, but you're no longer anonymous in the way that it used to be. They are paid. So I guess you would do it either because you really want or need the money / it, you're helping people and that's a beautiful gift. But yeah, that's I don't know if I could do it, to be honest. We're incredibly grateful, but that's, I mean, yeah, and they cap it at 25 families, but geez, that's still a lot, especially if these families are having multiple kids,
Right.
But
And
I
then
mean,
my
again,
brain
think
is like,
about,
I don't want to be juiced out like a cow, but that's what women have been doing for years by breastfeeding. So that's just like one privilege that you're talking about of not being, of being a man, actually.
I mean, the fact that like he's fathered all of these children, I mean, it's pretty well, but again, think about the service that he's provided. Like he's given us the greatest gift. You know what I mean? So again, if you're a person who that is a value of yours to serve others, I mean, it's an intense way to do it, but I mean, we're obviously very grateful.
Yeah, maybe if they can, I don't know, like multiply my sperm one day, maybe I'd do it. But yeah, just the thought of going to a clinic is a bit awkward. Very fascinating though. Like I don't often talk about these topics, and yeah, it's indeed interesting. I'm gonna read more, for sure. What are your goals this year? What are you focusing your time on?
Yeah, that's a good question. We recently did a lot of interviews with our members, just trying to get a better sense of um, what do they need and where are they currently spending their time and money. Something that's difficult about having a socially driven business is that sometimes you feels like you can't make a lot of money from it. We're not a nonprofit, we are for profit. Uh, but we've never wanted to charge people a lot of money because we want to keep this as accessible and inclusive as possible. So we've had to think of, creative ways to make money. And a lot of it has come from brands, partnerships, but those marketing budgets dried up during the pandemic. So something I've learned from members that we are now going to be focusing on this year is they are more willing to spend money on accountability coaching, where it's not just they're getting a 5.5 hour salary negotiation video course, but they're doing like a 90-day program with group sessions, one-on-one coaching. They get deadlines, homework. A lot of people are having trouble managing their time and energy. Back to that question of like setting boundaries, right? There's dreams they have, right? They want to change their job or whatever, start a business, but they're just not prioritizing it. Everything else keeps getting in the way. So what they really want is somebody to guide them, handhold them, and kick their butt to do it. So we are coming out with, so I think it's going to be the first week of March, a 90-day job seeker cohort. For people who are serious, we're only going to work with 30 people who are serious about getting their next job, really helping them kind of go from this desperation of I need a job to really owning how wonderful you are and doing things on a consistent basis to put yourself out there so you can attract the jobs to you. And it'll be a little bit of an experiment. We've done boot camps before, but they've not been for 3 months. So this is definitely more intense. And we've got lots of ideas of other things we can do that are, again, in that kind of like 90-day accountability cohort thing. The other thing we want to do is have our newsletter be shorter, have it be more one tip every week of how to earn more and live better, as opposed to just giving people tons and tons of information. So in a way, we're going to be doing less so that we can do more and hopefully make more.
Love it, Claire. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, ladiesgetpaid.com. Also, Ladies Get Paid on all social channels. I'm on Instagram at Claire Gets Paid, and also LinkedIn, Claire Wasserman. And I do have a couple more slots open for private coaching clients as well. And I'm starting to work with folks who are interested in creating courses or programs like those 30-day cohorts, because that's, I've taught at every major company and every major college. I have a lot to share in regards to taking something that you have an expertise and a personal story. How do you package it up in a way that can educate and inspire others? And that sort of organically started happening with people reaching out to me. So if that sounds interesting to anyone listening, men, women, doesn't matter the subject. I'm just really, really passionate about getting more people educated and inspired, and doing it not necessarily through school, because I wasn't a very good student, ironically, but I really like teaching. So yeah, clairewasserman.com is my website, and you can find out more there.